Emily Carter stepped off the transport plane into the dusty expanse of the military base, her boots crunching against the gravel with a quiet confidence that drew the attention of a few passing soldiers. She carried a small, well-worn duffel bag slung over one shoulder, its weight insignificant compared to the aura of focus she exuded. Her uniform was crisp, her posture impeccable. But there was nothing about her appearance that screamed danger or brilliance, nothing that would hint at the extraordinary skill she had honed over years of secretive training. The base was a hive of activity, with soldiers moving quickly between barracks, armored vehicles, and training grounds. The air buzzed with the sound of engines, shouted commands, and the rhythmic clatter of boots on gravel. Emily observed everything with calm precision, noting patterns in movement, the flow of personnel, and even the subtle shifts in wind direction that could carry sound or scent across the open training field. Her eyes, a piercing shade of green, flicked from one soldier to the next, recording details that most overlooked. As she walked toward the administrative building to report in, several soldiers turned to glance at her. Some whispered under their breath, curiosity and skepticism mixing in equal measure. A few smirked, assuming she was inexperienced or perhaps a temporary transfer sent for support duties. No one guessed the truth. Emily was far from ordinary. She was trained to a level that few had ever seen, her abilities crafted under the guidance of one of the most legendary snipers in military history. But she kept that part of her life hidden, knowing that revealing it too soon could cause envy, distrust, or worse, fear. Inside the building, she was greeted by Lieutenant Marcus Harlow, a tall, imposing man with a reputation for being both strict and calculating. He studied her carefully, his sharp eyes scanning for any sign of weakness or incompetence. "You're late?" he said without a greeting, though his tone lacked real anger. "I hope you're not here to waste our time." Emily offered a small, polite smile. "I apologize, sir. I arrived as scheduled." Her voice was calm, steady, unassuming, and yet there was a subtle authority in the way she spoke, something that made Harlow pause, just slightly. He motioned her to follow him to the briefing room. "We'll be conducting drills today. Precision, strategy, and speed. Let's see if you can keep up." Emily nodded, her expression unreadable. Inside, however, she was already analyzing the entire layout of the training ground, the angles of the targets, the elevation changes, and even the potential wind currents that could affect a shot from long distance. She had done this countless times before, in countless scenarios, but never with a team that didn't know what she was capable of. That anonymity suited her perfectly. Outside, the other soldiers were already assembled. They were a mix of seasoned veterans and younger recruits, all of them sizing each other up. Some noticed Emily, but quickly dismissed her presence. A few muttered comments under their breath, doubting that someone so quiet could possibly measure up to their expectations. The first drill was simple, long-range marksmanship. Soldiers would take turns shooting at distant targets under timed conditions. Emily waited patiently, observing each participant, noting their stances, their breathing patterns, even the subtle tension in their shoulders. When it was finally her turn, she stepped forward with calm confidence. Her rifle was a standard-issue precision sniper rifle, nothing extraordinary to the casual observer. But the way she handled it spoke volumes. She adjusted her stance with almost imperceptible corrections, her fingers light and deliberate on the trigger, her eye aligning perfectly with the crosshairs. The target, a tiny silhouette at several hundred meters, seemed almost impossibly small. Soldiers who had gone before her struggled, some missing entirely, others barely hitting the edge. Emily's first shot struck dead center. A collective gasp rose from the assembled soldiers. Whispers spread like wildfire. Some leaned closer, incredulous. Her second shot landed just above the first, perfect alignment. The third struck directly between the two. Harlow's brow furrowed. He had seen many sharpshooters, many skilled operatives, but there was a precision in Emily's shooting that was almost unnatural. He took note of her calm demeanor, the way she seemed unaffected by the pressure, unaffected by the eyes of others. She wasn't showing off. She wasn't trying to prove herself. She was simply executing, as if every motion, every calculation, had been burned into her muscle memory. As the drill concluded, Emily quietly stepped back, her performance complete. She did not boast. She did not smile triumphantly. Instead, she observed her fellow soldiers, noting their reactions, the subtle shifts in their attitudes. Some were impressed, others confused, still others suspicious. None realized the depth of her training or the years of mentorship behind each calculated movement. Later that evening, as the sun dipped behind the mountains surrounding the base, Emily sat alone on a bench near the edge of the training field. She watched the shadows stretch across the terrain, the wind rustling dry grass. Flashbacks surfaced. Early mornings with her mentor, hidden in the brush for hours, learning to control her breathing, steady her aim, anticipate movement, and think several steps ahead of any adversary. Those days had been grueling, demanding, often lonely, but they had shaped her into the operative she was today. Her mentor had been a legend, a sniper whose exploits were known to very few. He had taught her more than just marksmanship. He had taught her patience, discipline, humility, and the quiet strength that comes from knowing your abilities without needing recognition. Emily had carried those lessons with her across states and missions, keeping them hidden until the right moment. The base around her was noisy, soldiers calling out, vehicles moving, the hum of military life ongoing. Yet Emily felt a calm clarity that contrasted with the chaos, serene readiness that allowed her to see everything without being seen herself. She was ready for whatever challenges awaited, knowing that she carried not only skill, but the legacy of one of the greatest snipers in history. As the night deepened, she returned to her quarters, unpacking her minimal belongings. Her duffel bag contained essentials, but also carefully maintained tools of her craft, a small cleaning kit for her rifle, a notebook filled with calculations and observations, and a photograph of her mentor, worn and faded. She glanced at it, a quiet smile touching her lips. Tomorrow, she knew, would be another day of scrutiny, drills, and tests. Soldiers would continue to underestimate her. They would continue to doubt. And that was exactly how she wanted it. She would let her actions, not her words, reveal who she truly was. In the silence of her room, Emily allowed herself a brief moment of reflection. She thought about the long journey that had brought her here, the hidden training, the solitary hours in the wilderness, the lessons of patience, precision, and restraint. She was ready to step into the field and demonstrate everything she had learned. And yet, she knew the real challenge lay ahead. Not in drills or practice shots, but in the unpredictable chaos of actual missions, where lives would hang in the balance and every decision could mean survival or disaster. Emily felt a thrill of anticipation, a quiet excitement that only those who had truly mastered their craft could understand. Tomorrow, the soldiers would see her in action. They would notice the subtle differences in her technique, the almost unnatural calm that accompanied every shot, every calculation. And someday soon, they would discover the truth. The quiet woman among them was the protégée of a legend, trained to a degree that few could imagine. But for now, she rested, calm, focused, and ready. Emily Carter had arrived quietly, unassuming and unnoticed. Yet beneath that exterior lay the skill, patience, and precision of a master ready to change everything with just one shot. Emily Carter awoke before dawn, the pale light filtering through the narrow window of her quarters. The base was quiet now, only the distant hum of generators, and the occasional clatter of boots echoing faintly across the compound. She sat on the edge of her bunk, stretching her arms, feeling the familiar tension in her muscles. Years of rigorous training had conditioned her body, but every movement still required conscious care, precision, and discipline. In these moments alone, she allowed herself to remember. Her memories were like carefully folded maps, each folded corner revealing lessons, mistakes, and triumphs. She remembered the first day she met her mentor, a man whose reputation preceded him, whispered about in hushed tones by veterans and intelligence operatives alike. Few had seen him in action, and even fewer knew his name. To the public, he was almost mythical, a ghost whose bullets could change the course of events before anyone realized he existed. To Emily, he was a teacher, a guide, and a figure of relentless discipline. She recalled the first week of training. The terrain was rugged, a mix of dense woods and open fields, with targets placed at varying distances. Her mentor had not spoken much. His method was silent observation and correction, watching as she adjusted her stance, her breathing, and her timing. "Every shot you take," he said finally, voice low and measured, "is a promise. A promise that you will be precise, patient, and unerring. Fail that promise, and you risk more than just the target." At first, Emily had struggled. Her shots were uneven, her focus faltering under pressure. The mentor's corrections were subtle yet unrelenting, often just a tilt of his head or a brief nod, but they carried weight. Slowly, her muscles learned the rhythm. Her mind calculated wind and distance instinctively, and her breathing synced with her pulse. Days became weeks, weeks became months, and each success brought a quiet satisfaction, though she never allowed herself to celebrate. There was always another target, another lesson, another test of patience. Her mentor also taught her strategy beyond marksmanship. Emily learned to observe without being observed, to move silently, and to anticipate an opponent's actions before they themselves knew their intentions. Every step in the wilderness became a study in physics, psychology, and human nature. How the wind could carry sound, how shadows could deceive the eye, how a small movement could betray a presence. She absorbed it all. Under his guidance, she became a student of the world itself, as much as a sharpshooter. But the training was more than physical and mental. It was deeply personal. Her mentor challenged her in ways that forced her to confront her fears, her impatience, and her pride. "You cannot control the world," he said one evening as they crouched in the underbrush, the distant glow of sunset painting the horizon. "You can only control yourself. And if you control yourself perfectly, the world will bend to the precision of your actions." Emily remembered the weight of that lesson, how it settled into her mind like sediment, permanent and unshakable. Emily's memories were interrupted by the sound of distant gunfire from the training grounds, signaling that drills had begun. She quickly dressed in her tactical uniform, adjusting her gear with precision. The rifle she carried was familiar, yet her hands treated it with reverence. Every bolt, every scope adjustment, every strap and sling had been meticulously tested and retested. It was more than a weapon. It was an extension of her mind and body. She moved through the base with quiet confidence, aware of every gaze and whisper, yet unaffected. Soldiers glanced at her, some curious, some skeptical, none fully understanding the depth of her experience. They only saw the young woman among them, polite, reserved, and seemingly ordinary. None guessed the hours she had spent lying in wait, the countless simulations she had completed, the mental discipline that allowed her to remain calm in situations where others would panic. Emily's past was not only shaped by her mentor, but also by the countless missions they had undertaken together in the shadows. She remembered covert operations where every bullet counted, every misstep could mean failure or death. Though she could not disclose specifics, the lessons remained: patience, observation, discretion, and the understanding that one well-placed action could change the outcome of an entire operation. These experiences had honed her judgment, teaching her when to act and when to wait. Timing, she had learned, was often as lethal as the bullet itself. Despite the intensity of her training, her mentor emphasized humility. Bragging about skill, he had told her repeatedly, is the surest way to lose it. Let your actions speak, not your words. Emily internalized this lesson, letting her skills remain hidden beneath her calm exterior. Today, at this military base, that approach served her well. She could observe, act, and succeed without drawing undue attention. Her mentor had always believed that true mastery was silent until revealed at the perfect moment. Emily's thoughts returned to the present as she arrived at the training grounds. A small group of soldiers was already gathered, practicing maneuvers and calling out positions. Some recognized her from the previous day's drills, whispers following her movements. A few doubted her, still unconvinced that one successful performance was anything more than luck. Emily paid them no mind. She had learned long ago that doubt and criticism were distractions, to be noted but never allowed to interfere with focus. Her instructor, Lieutenant Harlow, approached with a clipboard, glancing at her notes before looking up at her. We'll be running advanced exercises today. Observation, long-range engagement, and team coordination, he said. I expect everyone to perform at maximum capacity. Missed targets, hesitation, or poor judgment will not be tolerated. Emily nodded politely, listening carefully, her mind already analyzing the field, calculating angles, distances, and potential wind currents. Her mentor's lessons echoed in her head, guiding every calculation, every mental check. She could feel the subtle pulse of the world around her, the way the trees swayed in the breeze, how shadows fell across terrain, the almost imperceptible vibrations of footsteps and vehicles. She was ready. As the team moved into position, Emily found a vantage point slightly removed from the others. She crouched, adjusting her scope, observing both the targets and her fellow soldiers. She noted their habits, their errors, their tendencies. Even without moving a finger, she began guiding them silently, anticipating their decisions and subtly positioning herself to provide cover when needed. Time passed with measured precision, the exercises progressing. Emily's performance remained flawless, though she drew little attention to herself. Each shot, each movement, each decision reflected the countless hours of training and mentorship that had prepared her for this moment. The soldiers who had doubted her were beginning to notice, curiosity replacing skepticism, though they had yet to understand the magnitude of her skill. By the end of the day, Emily stood quietly, watching the sun dip behind the mountains. The wind had shifted several times, requiring her to make constant mental adjustments, all executed with near-perfect accuracy. Her mentor's lessons were alive in her actions, the culmination of years of discipline, patience, and silent study. She had arrived at the base as an unassuming soldier, but every action, every calculation, every shot hinted at the hidden force within her. Emily knew that soon, the true test would come not just exercises or simulations, but real missions where failure could mean lives lost. And when that day arrived, the team would see her not as a quiet recruit, but as the product of the most intense, meticulous training imaginable, guided by a legendary sniper whose shadow still shaped every move she made. As night fell and the base quieted, Emily returned to her quarters. She cleaned her rifle, checking every component with obsessive care, and reviewed her notes and calculations. Her mentor had always emphasized preparation. Luck favors the prepared, he had said. She had never forgotten it. Tonight, she reflected not only on her past, but also on the challenges ahead, mentally mapping out the scenarios she might face, the variables to account for, the split-second decisions that could determine success or failure. Emily Carter had arrived quietly, unassuming and unnoticed. Yet beneath that exterior lay a lifetime of preparation, mentorship, and mastery ready to reveal itself when the moment demanded perfection. The morning sun crept over the jagged hills surrounding the base, casting long shadows across the training grounds. Soldiers assembled, weapons at the ready, tension thick in the air. Today was not a routine drill. It was the first advanced test, designed to push even the most experienced operatives to their limits. Emily Carter arrived quietly, moving with her usual calm and precision. She carried her rifle, lightweight and perfectly balanced, as if it were an extension of her own body. Her focus was absolute. Lieutenant Marcus Harlow stepped forward, clipboard in hand. His face was a mask of professional scrutiny, but his sharp eyes betrayed curiosity about the young woman whose skill had already caused a stir. Today's exercise will test observation, reaction time, and precision under pressure, he announced. Targets will appear unpredictably, and every decision counts. Mistakes will be noted. Excellence will be rewarded. The team was led to a wide open field, dotted with obstacles, elevation changes, and concealed positions. Soldiers murmured among themselves, some anxious, some confident. Emily noticed every nuance, the angle of the sun, the way shadows lengthened, the faint rustle of the wind through the grass. Her mind cataloged variables with the efficiency of a machine, calculating distances, wind resistance, and potential paths for enemy movement. The exercise began. Targets appeared intermittently, some moving, some partially obscured. Soldiers engaged, firing shots that varied in accuracy. Whispers of doubt and frustration filled the air as missed shots marked their attempts. Emily observed quietly, noting each soldier's tendencies. A slight twitch of a finger before a shot, the way one soldier's breathing changed under pressure, the overcorrection another made when aiming. When it was her turn, she stepped forward with measured composure. The first target appeared, distant and partially hidden behind a cluster of obstacles. Emily adjusted her stance, exhaled slowly, and squeezed the trigger. The bullet struck precisely where intended. A murmur ran through the group, eyes turning to her in disbelief. She took her time, letting the second target appear, and again her shot hit dead center. By the third, even the skeptics were staring, curiosity replacing their initial doubt. But Emily's skill was not only in her accuracy. It was in her observation, her anticipation. She didn't just react. She predicted. She noted subtle movements in the environment, shifts in the wind, flickers of sunlight, the micro vibrations of the terrain beneath her feet. She calculated trajectories with an almost mathematical precision, each shot a product of instinct, honed by years of disciplined mentorship. The other soldiers continued to struggle, some underestimating the difficulty, others panicking under the pressure. Emily moved quietly among them when the exercise called for repositioning, offering no words, only subtle guidance through gestures and body language. She adjusted her stance, made minor recommendations, and positioned herself strategically to cover vulnerable angles. None of them realized she was protecting them, anticipating their mistakes before they could even occur. Harlow watched from a distance, eyebrows furrowed. He had trained hundreds of soldiers, yet there was something different about Emily. She was not flashy. She did not draw attention, yet every movement, every decision, spoke of mastery beyond ordinary experience. Her calm under pressure was unsettling. He realized she did not merely react. She controlled the rhythm of the exercise, dictating outcomes with silent authority. As the exercise progressed, the scenarios became more complex. Multiple targets moved simultaneously, some appearing briefly before disappearing behind obstacles. Soldiers scrambled, taking shots with varying degrees of success. Emily remained steady, her breathing controlled, her focus unbroken. She prioritized targets with strategic precision, neutralizing the most dangerous threats first. Her mind moved faster than the action around her, calculating variables and adjusting for every contingency. At one point, a moving target appeared at extreme distance, partially shielded by terrain. Other soldiers hesitated, uncertain how to approach it. Emily stepped forward, crouching behind cover, aligning her rifle. She adjusted her scope, accounted for the distance, the wind, and the subtle sway of her weapon. She waited. Patience was her ally. When the moment was perfect, she fired, and the target was neutralized with flawless accuracy. Gasps filled the air. Even Harlow's expression betrayed admiration, tempered by disbelief. By the end of the exercise, Emily had consistently outperformed her peers. Not only had she demonstrated remarkable precision, but her strategic awareness, anticipation, and calm under pressure had altered the outcome of the entire scenario. Soldiers who had doubted her began to whisper, their skepticism turning to awe. Some approached her cautiously, seeking advice, though Emily offered none overtly, letting her performance speak for itself. After the drill, the soldiers regrouped. Many were exhausted, frustrated, or confused by their own performance in comparison to Emily's flawless execution. Harlow approached her, clipboard in hand, his expression unreadable. "Impressive," he said finally. "Your performance exceeded expectations. I would like to know your methods, your calculations, your approach." Emily simply smiled, a small, polite gesture. "Sir, I just follow procedure, focus carefully, and make adjustments based on observation," she replied. She chose her words carefully, revealing nothing of the depth of her experience or the legendary mentor behind her skill. The other soldiers watched the exchange, some curious, some envious. Rumors would start to circulate. Who was this woman who performed with such precision and calm under pressure? Some speculated she had years of prior experience. Others suggested unreported training. No one guessed the truth, that her abilities were the product of mentorship from one of the most respected and secretive snipers in history, someone whose reputation alone inspired both fear and admiration. As the day progressed, Emily continued to move among the team, observing and learning. She noted patterns in the soldiers' behavior, understanding their strengths and weaknesses. Her mentor had taught her that mastery was not only about one's own skill, but about reading others, predicting actions, and adapting accordingly. She applied these lessons silently, preparing herself for the real missions that lay ahead. In the quiet moments, Emily allowed herself to reflect. She remembered specific lessons from her mentor, how to calculate bullet trajectory based on wind, angle, and environmental variables, how to remain still and patient for hours if necessary, how to anticipate human behavior and react before others even realize the danger. These lessons were ingrained in her very being, forming a foundation that no challenge could shake. Even as the soldiers complained, laughed, or criticized, Emily remained unaffected. She had learned long ago that emotion was a liability in precision work. Calm observation and decisive action were far more powerful than arrogance or display. Her mentor had drilled this into her relentlessly, and today, every principle he had taught was evident in her actions. As the exercise concluded, Emily packed up her equipment with the same meticulous care she always maintained. The sun had climbed higher, casting its light across the training field. Soldiers were dispersing, talking among themselves about the day's results. Whispers about Emily grew louder, speculation turning into curiosity, and for some, admiration. They began to see her not as an ordinary recruit, but as someone extraordinary, though none yet understood why. Harlow approached once more, his expression softened slightly. "Emily," he said, "I've seen many sharpshooters in my career, but very few who combine precision, observation, and composure the way you do. I expect you will continue to impress in real scenarios. I want to see how you handle a live mission. That will truly test your abilities." Emily nodded, accepting his words without arrogance. "Yes, sir," she replied. Her mind, however, was already moving forward, calculating potential challenges. anticipating obstacles, and preparing for the moment when her skills would be tested beyond the training grounds. That evening, as she sat quietly in her quarters, Emily reflected on the day. Her mentor's teachings had guided her through countless drills and exercises, but she knew that the real test, the mission that mattered, was yet to come. Each lesson, each memory, each calculation would converge in the moments when lives depended on precision, patience, and unerring judgment. Emily had already earned respect silently, but the true revelation of her skill, and the shadow of the legendary mentor who had trained her, was still to come. When that moment arrived, it would be undeniable, and the soldiers around her would understand finally that the quiet young woman among them was far more than she appeared. She was a master of her craft, a strategist, and a silent force whose actions could tip the balance between success and failure. For now, she prepared, observed, and waited. The first test had been passed, but the true challenge loomed. And Emily Carter was ready. The morning air was heavy with anticipation as Emily Carter and her unit prepared to deploy. Today wasn't a drill. It was a live operational exercise, one that tested not just skill, but strategy, patience, and the ability to anticipate the unpredictable. Soldiers moved with urgency, checking gear, loading weapons, and reviewing plans. Emily, as always, moved deliberately, her steps quiet but purposeful, her focus unwavering. She felt the familiar pulse of readiness in her veins, a calm that contrasted with the flurry of activity around her. Lieutenant Marcus Harlow briefed the unit one last time. "You're entering a simulated hostile environment," he said, voice firm, commanding attention. "Objectives will be dynamic. You'll face unpredictable threats. Survival depends on observation, communication, and precision. Execute well, and we succeed. Fail, and the consequences will be immediate." Soldiers nodded, their faces a mix of determination and apprehension. Emily studied the terrain silently, noting natural cover, potential ambush points, and subtle shifts in elevation. Every detail mattered. As the unit moved out, Emily positioned herself at the rear, allowing others to take the lead. She observed each movement carefully, noting both strengths and weaknesses. Her mentor's lessons guided her, reminding her that observation was as lethal as action. Every flinch, every shift in stance, every hesitation revealed more than words could. She adjusted her strategy subtly, guiding the unit's formation without speaking, ensuring that potential vulnerabilities were minimized. The first challenge appeared almost immediately, a simulated enemy patrol moving quietly through dense brush. Other soldiers froze, unsure of the optimal response. Emily's mind raced, calculating distances, trajectories, and angles of approach. She signaled subtly, pointing out cover positions and silently coordinating movements. When the patrol drew closer, Emily took her shot with precision, neutralizing the threat before anyone else even reacted. A ripple of amazement ran through the group, though she didn't dwell on it. Every action had purpose. Pride was irrelevant. The unit pressed forward into more challenging terrain. They crossed a shallow ravine, navigated uneven hills, and traversed sparse woodlands. Bullets whizzed past from simulated enemy positions. Soldiers ducked, fired, and flinched, often revealing their lack of experience under pressure. Emily moved with controlled grace, each step calculated to avoid unnecessary exposure. She noted every potential blind spot and every angle of attack, anticipating threats before they materialized. Her mentor's voice echoed in her mind. Predict before they act. Observe before you strike. Patience is your weapon. As they approached a narrow corridor between two ridges, the simulation intensified. Multiple enemy positions had been reported, some camouflaged, some in motion. The unit leader hesitated, debating strategy. Emily stepped forward, scanning the environment. She observed the faintest disturbance in the grass, a telltale sign of movement. She noted the way sunlight reflected off metal surfaces, the subtle change in wind direction that could carry sound, and the pattern of shadows that revealed hidden positions. With silent precision, she neutralized the first threat, then another, moving smoothly from cover to cover. Her actions were almost imperceptible to her fellow soldiers, yet the results were undeniable. Threats eliminated, the unit kept safe. Harlow, observing from a distance, could hardly hide his astonishment. Emily wasn't just shooting accurately, she was controlling the battlefield, orchestrating outcomes without drawing attention to herself. By midday, the unit encountered a more complex scenario. A high-value simulated target moving unpredictably through the terrain, flanked by multiple enemy operatives. The group faltered, unsure how to approach. Emily assessed the situation, mapping out multiple variables in her mind: distance, line of sight, angles, and cover. Her breathing slowed, heart steady, every muscle coiled for the perfect sequence. She communicated subtly with a hand gesture to one soldier, signaling movement toward cover while she prepared her shot. The target moved into her line of sight. Emily adjusted her scope, factoring in wind, trajectory, and elevation. She remembered her mentor's teachings on patience waiting, not just for opportunity, but for perfection. The seconds stretched, her focus absolute. Then, with calm precision, she fired. The target was neutralized flawlessly, and the surrounding enemy threats were minimized by her careful planning. The unit experienced a rare moment of silence, a stunned awareness of the skill that had just been demonstrated. Afterward, soldiers gathered to regroup. Many whispered among themselves, disbelief in their voices. "Did you see that shot?" one asked. She knew exactly where everyone was before she even moved. Emily simply adjusted her gear, her expression serene. No boast, no arrogance, just quiet competence. The others began to realize that she was not simply a sharpshooter. She was a strategist, a silent protector, a presence whose influence shaped every outcome. Harlow approached her, his expression conflicted, a mix of admiration and professional wariness. "Emily," he said, voice firm but carrying subtle awe, "you've changed how this unit operates. Your observations, your precision. It's unlike anything I've seen." Emily nodded politely. "Thank you, sir," she replied, her voice calm, betraying none of the exhilaration she felt. Every action had purpose, and every success was simply the result of preparation and discipline. The exercise continued into the afternoon. Emily guided the unit silently, anticipating enemy movements, adjusting strategies, and taking precise shots when necessary. She moved fluidly through the terrain, her presence barely noticed until her results became undeniable. Soldiers who had initially dismissed her began to seek her out, observing her methods, asking questions, and attempting to emulate her calm focus. None fully understood the depth of her experience, but respect was growing nonetheless. During a brief pause, Emily found herself on a ridge overlooking the simulated battlefield. She observed the patterns of movement, noting how stress and fatigue affected her comrades. Her mentor's teachings were clear. Anticipation was as crucial as execution. By understanding behavior and predicting outcomes, one could control not just the battlefield, but the flow of events itself. She silently adjusted her position to cover a vulnerable angle, ensuring that the unit remained protected as they continued their maneuvers. As the exercise drew to a close, Emily's role became increasingly apparent. While others had focused on immediate threats, she had orchestrated the engagement with foresight and subtle guidance. Every successful action, every eliminated threat, every minimized risk was a product of her meticulous observation and precise execution. Soldiers who had doubted her now viewed her with quiet awe, slowly grasping the significance of her abilities. At the end of the day, Harlow called the unit together for debriefing. "This was more than an exercise," he said. This was a demonstration of what can be achieved when observation, strategy, and precision are executed flawlessly. I want to commend Emily Carter. Your performance has set a standard for this unit. Take note, everyone there is much to learn. Emily accepted the acknowledgement with her usual humility, offering no words of pride. She knew that true mastery required more than a single display of skill. It required consistency, patience, and preparation for challenges far greater than drills. Yet, in her quiet way, she had begun to earn the respect of her peers, a first step toward the influence she would wield in the missions to come. That evening, as Emily returned to her quarters, she reflected on the day. The lessons of her mentor were alive in every action she had taken, guiding her decisions and shaping outcomes. She had anticipated movement, neutralized threats, and ensured the safety of her unit, all without overt recognition. Her skills remained largely hidden beneath a veneer of calm professionalism, but the impact of her presence was unmistakable. Emily knew that these exercises were only a prelude. Real missions would bring unpredictability, danger, and lives at stake. Yet she felt ready. Every lesson, every calculation, every silent observation had prepared her for the moments when precision would be the difference between success and failure. Her mentor's teachings, once hidden in the wilderness and isolation of rigorous training, had found expression in her actions. She unpacked her gear carefully, checking each rifle component, each piece of equipment. Her mentor had instilled in her an almost obsessive attention to detail. One misaligned part could jeopardize an entire operation. Emily cleaned her rifle meticulously, adjusting the scope and testing its mechanisms with practiced hands. She reviewed mental notes from the day's exercise, analyzing every decision and every outcome, seeking improvements even in flawless execution. As night settled over the base, Emily allowed herself a brief reflection. The soldiers around her were beginning to see glimpses of her skill, but the true extent remained hidden. She had entered the unit quietly, unassuming and unnoticed. Yet every action, every calculation, and every perfectly executed maneuver carried the mark of someone who had been trained to a level few could imagine. Emily Carter was no ordinary operative. She was the product of relentless mentorship, of patience, and of mastery honed in secrecy. Her presence on the battlefield would change the way her unit operated, elevating them through her quiet influence and unmatched skill. The first field exercise had revealed a fraction of her abilities, enough to inspire awe, curiosity, and respect. The rest, the true demonstration, was still to come. She lay down on her bunk that night, listening to the distant hum of the bass, reflecting on her role. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new threats, and new opportunities to test her skills. Emily knew that when the real mission arrived, the soldiers around her would see not just her precision, but the culmination of years of hidden training and mentorship. She would be ready, as always, calm, precise, and unflinching. And as she drifted into sleep, her thoughts were not of accolades or recognition, but of preparation, anticipation, and the quiet knowledge that she was ready for anything. Emily Carter had moved beyond the drills and the exercises. She had begun to step into her true role, silently shaping the outcomes of every action around her, preparing for the day when her skills would be revealed in full. The sun had begun its slow descent behind the jagged hills, casting long, twisting shadows across the training terrain. Emily Carter crouched behind a cluster of jagged rocks, her rifle resting lightly on the ledge, every muscle in her body poised with quiet control. The final exercise of the day had been declared the impossible shot scenario, a simulation, designed to test skill, patience, and nerve under extreme pressure. Soldiers had struggled to hit the distant target, obscured partially by terrain, moving unpredictably, and shielded by simulated cover. For them, it was a challenge bordering on impossible. For Emily, it was another test, but one she intended to dominate flawlessly. The team had been briefed on the parameters only moments before. A high-value target moving along a ridge some 900 meters away, partially covered by a series of natural rock formations, with secondary targets attempting to flank the position. Any miscalculation could endanger the unit in this simulation, a pressure designed to push operatives to their limit. Soldiers murmured nervously, adjusting scopes and testing windage, measuring distance and debating trajectory. Emily simply observed. She had already begun calculating wind speed, direction, temperature, distance, gravitational pull, and even the subtle sway of her rifle. Every detail mattered. Lieutenant Harlow paced nearby, clipboard in hand, visibly impressed but unwilling to show it. He had seen sharpshooters in his career, but few had approached the challenge with the precision and calm Emily exuded. He whispered to a fellow officer, "Watch her. If anyone can make this shot, it's her." Emily's mentor's voice echoed in her mind. Patience is the secret. Wait for the moment when physics, skill, and opportunity align perfectly. Do not rush. Strike only when certainty is absolute. She took a deep breath, feeling the rhythm of her own pulse, syncing her breathing with the world around her. The team's chatter and movements faded into the background. The only sounds she acknowledged were the faint rustle of the wind and the distant clatter of moving obstacles. The target appeared in a brief opening between two rocks, moving slowly along a narrow path. Soldiers flinched, fired early, or miscalculated, their shots missing by meters or colliding with the simulated cover. Emily adjusted her stance slightly, ensuring her rifle rested steadily on the rock beneath her, her cheek pressed lightly against the stock. Her eye aligned perfectly with the crosshairs. She observed the slightest movement in the target's gait, the shifting angle of sunlight reflecting off metallic equipment, the gusts of wind bending the grass along the slope. Every micro-detail was a calculation she had memorized within seconds. Time seemed to slow. Her pulse remained steady. She knew the trajectory, the timing, and the precise moment the target would be fully exposed. Her finger hovered lightly on the trigger, ready to apply the slightest pressure with absolute control. Around her, soldiers whispered nervously, some glancing at her in awe, some anxious, but she remained unaware of their focus. Her mind was focused on one thing, the shot. Then came the moment. The target shifted into a narrow corridor between rocks, partially obscured by shadow. Emily inhaled slowly, holding her breath for the perfect moment, her body completely still. She applied the slightest squeeze to the trigger. The shot flew. The bullet struck true, hitting the target dead center, perfectly neutralizing the simulation's high-value objective. A ripple of astonishment spread through the assembled soldiers. Gasps, murmurs, and stunned silence followed. The impossible had been achieved. Emily did not move, did not react with triumph. She simply observed the results, maintaining the same calm demeanor she had exhibited throughout every exercise. But the simulation was not yet over. Secondary targets began moving along flanking positions. Many soldiers scrambled, uncertain how to respond. Emily calculated the trajectories, accounting for distance, angle, and the movement of both obstacles and enemy positions. One by one, she engaged with methodical precision, neutralizing threats without exposing herself or jeopardizing her team. Each shot was deliberate, calculated, and devastatingly effective. Harlow finally stepped closer, his expression a mix of admiration and disbelief. He watched as Emily adjusted her scope, accounted for wind drift, and neutralized another distant target with flawless timing. He had witnessed skilled shooters before, but never one who combined such calm composure, strategic awareness, and lethal precision simultaneously. He began to whisper her name under his breath, almost afraid to break the spell of her performance. As the exercise concluded, Emily stood quietly, lowering her rifle. The other soldiers approached, some hesitantly, some with obvious awe in their expressions. "How did you—" one began, unable to finish the thought. Another simply shook their head, muttering about the impossibility of what they had witnessed. Emily offered a small, polite smile, but said nothing. She had never been trained to boast. Her skill spoke for itself. Finally, Harlow addressed the team, his voice tinged with genuine respect. "Emily Carter has demonstrated skill, patience, and composure beyond what we expected, even for this advanced exercise. Let this serve as a lesson. Mastery is more than hitting a target. It's anticipation, calculation, and unwavering calm under pressure." His eyes lingered on her, understanding dawning that she was not simply an exceptional sharpshooter, but a strategist, a force that subtly guided every outcome. As the sun dipped lower, casting the battlefield in warm orange light, Emily reflected silently. She had executed flawlessly, her mentor's teachings alive in every movement. The patience, discipline, and focus she had learned were not simply tools, they were extensions of herself. Every calculation, every precise adjustment had been a tribute to the countless hours spent in training, alone and under her mentor's watchful eye. Soldiers whispered among themselves, curiosity and awe evident in their voices. Many had underestimated her, believing her quiet demeanor to signify inexperience. Now they had seen the truth. Emily was not only skilled, but trained by someone whose reputation alone inspired awe and fear. The realization spread slowly, like a ripple, as they pieced together the extent of her abilities. Harlow approached her one last time, placing a firm hand on her shoulder. "Emily, I want a full debrief of your calculations and techniques," he said. "Your performance today was extraordinary. I've never seen anything like it." Emily nodded politely. "Thank you, sir. I will provide what I can." Internally, she smiled quietly. The lesson of her mentor had always been the same. True mastery requires preparation, observation, and humility. Recognition was secondary. Results were paramount. As night fell over the base, Emily returned to her quarters. She unpacked her gear with meticulous care, cleaning her rifle, checking the scope, and reviewing the calculations she had executed that day. She reflected on the exercise, not as a demonstration of superiority, but as preparation for the real challenges ahead. The impossible shot was not just a test, it was a preview of what her true skill could achieve when lives were at stake. She remembered her mentor's words. "A single shot can change everything. Precision without patience is failure. Mastery lies in the mind, not just the hand." Emily had lived those words today. Every calculation, every deliberate movement, every decision had been a reflection of those lessons. She had transformed an impossible challenge into a flawless demonstration, silent yet undeniable in its impact. As she lay in bed that night, the distant hum of the bass surrounding her, Emily allowed herself a brief moment of satisfaction. Not pride, not arrogance, but recognition of the quiet power of preparation, patience, and discipline. The teen now knew she was extraordinary, yet few understood why. None knew the true depth of her mentorship or the legacy that had shaped her abilities. That revelation, she knew, would come in time when it mattered most. For Emily Carter, the impossible shot was not the pinnacle. It was a reminder of what she had learned, a rehearsal for real missions, and a quiet testament to the mentorship that had guided her. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, and she would face them as she always had, calm, precise, and ready. Her mentor's shadow had prepared her for this moment, but now, the world around her would see the results of that training in action, silent, deadly, and flawless. The next morning, Emily Carter arrived at the base with the same quiet precision that had become her trademark. The sun had just begun to climb over the rugged mountains surrounding the training grounds, casting long shadows across the field. Soldiers moved quickly, their chatter punctuated by the clatter of boots on gravel. Rumors about Emily's skill had spread overnight, and many of her peers now watched her with a mixture of curiosity, awe, and cautious respect. Yet none could fully grasp the depth of her abilities, and certainly none knew the secret she carried, the identity of the legendary mentor who had trained her. Today's exercise would take them into a simulated urban combat zone, designed to test leadership, strategy, and coordination under extreme pressure. Lieutenant Marcus Harlow stood at the front, briefing the unit. "This exercise is more complex than anything you've faced," he said. "Enemy combatants are concealed within buildings, alleys, and elevated positions. Your objective is to secure the area, neutralize threats, and protect civilians in the simulation. Precision, communication, and strategy will determine success." Emily listened attentively, her mind already mapping the layout of the urban simulation. She noted vantage points, potential ambush sites, and lines of fire. Unlike her peers, who often rushed to action, Emily prioritized observation. She watched their movements, learning their strengths and weaknesses, preparing to guide them subtly through the chaos. As the exercise commenced, the unit moved into the urban zone. Gunfire crackled from distant positions, and simulated explosions echoed through the streets. Soldiers hesitated at intersections, unsure which path offered the safest advance. Emily moved methodically, positioning herself on high ground, scanning for threats, and quietly signaling to her comrades. Her presence was almost invisible, yet every move she made influenced the flow of action around her. The challenge escalated when multiple enemy operatives emerged from hidden positions, forcing the unit into a tense firefight. Soldiers fired instinctively, but without strategy, many missed or exposed themselves. Emily remained calm. She calculated trajectories, anticipated enemy movements, and selected her shots with deliberate care. Her rifle rang out with precision, neutralizing targets efficiently and protecting her team from harm. Harlow observed, his skepticism giving way to admiration. He had always known Emily was talented, but today her performance went beyond individual skill. She was orchestrating the battlefield, influencing outcomes without direct commands, her tactical awareness shaping every engagement. Even the most experienced soldiers began to recognize her impact, moving more confidently as they subconsciously followed the patterns she created. During a brief lull, Emily noticed a group of new targets entering the simulation from an unexpected direction, scenario designed to test adaptability. Most soldiers would have panicked or hesitated. Emily, however, instinctively calculated their path, the likely points of cover, and the angles necessary to neutralize the threat without compromising her team. She fired a series of precise shots, each one eliminating a target with minimal exposure. Then came the moment that would reveal her deepest secret. A communications alert signaled a simulated hostage situation in a nearby building. The scenario required split-second decision-making and exceptional precision. Soldiers debated tactics, unsure whether to storm the building or attempt negotiation. Emily's mind raced, analyzing angles, possible entry points, and line-of-sight vulnerabilities. She realized the solution required not only skill but authority, the type of command earned through experience, not rank. At that moment, Lieutenant Harlow called her over. "Emily, you take lead on this scenario," he said, his voice carrying an unfamiliar respect. "We need your guidance. Everyone will follow your direction." The words were simple, but they carried weight. Emily nodded, acknowledging the responsibility without hesitation. Moving swiftly to the building, Emily assessed the situation from the outside. The windows revealed the positions of both hostiles and hostages. She signaled to her team, directing them to cover specific angles, approach from calculated positions, and maintain communication. Her commands were minimal, precise, and executed with authority that left no room for doubt. The team followed without question, their trust in her growing with every action. As Emily prepared to neutralize the lead threat, she paused for a critical moment. She adjusted her scope, calculated trajectory, and steadied her breathing. Then, in a single flawless motion, she fired. The target was neutralized instantly, allowing her team to move safely into the building and secure the hostages. The exercise ended successfully, the unit achieving results far beyond expectations. Soldiers gathered afterward, visibly shaken and impressed. Whispers filled the room. How did she do that? She's not just skilled, she's unstoppable. Emily remained silent, letting the outcome speak for itself. Yet even as they marveled at her abilities, the moment had arrived to reveal the truth behind her extraordinary talent. Harlow approached, his expression a mixture of respect and curiosity. "Emily, there's something I need to understand," he said. "Where did you learn to operate at this level? Your precision, your strategy. It's unlike anything I've seen." Emily took a deep breath, and for the first time, revealed the secret she had carried so carefully. "My mentor trained me," she said quietly. "He's a legendary sniper, known for his work in covert operations. His identity is classified, but his influence shaped everything I know about observation, patience, and precision. Without his guidance, none of this would be possible." The room fell silent. Soldiers exchanged glances, realizing the magnitude of her revelation. Harlow's eyes widened in recognition as he processed the implications. The mentor they had all heard whispers about, a figure almost mythical in reputation, had personally trained the young woman standing before them. Her achievements were no longer just skill, they were the extension of a legacy few could ever hope to match. Curiosity and respect transformed into awe. Soldiers who had doubted her, whispered about her, or dismissed her as ordinary, now recognized the extraordinary lineage behind her skill. She was not merely talented. She was a living testament to a master's training, a protege carrying the precision, discipline, and wisdom of a legend. Emily, however, remained grounded. "I share my knowledge not to boast," she said. "I share it so we can succeed together. The lessons I learned are not just about shooting, they're about strategy, patience, and teamwork. Today, the team's success proves that understanding and coordination matter as much as individual skill." Harlow nodded slowly. "Then consider this a turning point. Not just for you, Emily, but for this unit. Your mentor's influence has elevated your capability, and by extension, ours. Use it wisely." Emily's green eyes reflected calm determination. She understood the responsibility, now resting on her shoulders, the need to guide, protect, and elevate her team while remaining precise, patient, and strategic. That evening, Emily returned to her quarters, reflecting on the day's events. The revelation of her mentor's identity had shifted the dynamics of the unit. Respect was no longer tentative. It was earned and acknowledged. Soldiers approached her with questions, seeking guidance, insight, and advice on tactics and marksmanship. She responded patiently, sharing lessons that would strengthen the team without revealing all of her knowledge. Her mentor's teachings were powerful, but some lessons were reserved for the right moments where they could make a difference between success and failure in real operations. Emily reviewed her notes, cleaned her rifle, and reflected on the delicate balance she now held: visibility and influence, guidance and discretion. Her skills were no longer a secret, yet the true extent remained hidden. The team had glimpsed her mastery, but they had not yet witnessed the full scope of what her mentor had taught her, the combination of observation, patience, strategy, and execution that turned any challenge into a calculated opportunity. She recalled a lesson from her mentor, spoken during a long night in the wilderness. "Your skill is a shadow. It guides, protects, and influences. Show it fully only when it matters most, and always with purpose. Recognition is fleeting. Mastery is permanent." Emily had lived by these words her entire career. Today had been a step in revealing her influence, but the ultimate demonstration of skill, when precision and judgment would be tested in ways that mattered beyond simulations, was still to come. As the base settled into night, Emily sat quietly, reflecting on the lessons, the trust she had earned, and the responsibility she now carried. Her mentor's shadow was no longer just a memory. It was a guiding force in the present, shaping her influence on the unit and the outcomes of missions that lay ahead. She had proven herself capable, not just through marksmanship, but through strategic vision, calm authority, and disciplined execution. Tomorrow would bring new exercises, new challenges, and new opportunities to elevate the team further. Emily Carter was ready not just as a sharpshooter, but as a strategist, a leader, and the living legacy of a legendary mentor. And while her peers now knew a fraction of her skill, the true depth of her ability, honed in secrecy and discipline, remained reserved for the moments that truly mattered. The early morning mist clung to the outskirts of the base as Emily Carter prepared her equipment for deployment. Today was no simulation. Today, the stakes were real, and the outcome would directly affect lives. The team had been briefed on a high-priority mission. A rogue paramilitary group had seized control of a strategic facility, and intelligence suggested that hostages were being held inside. Every moment of delay increased the risk. Emily's heart remained steady, her mind sharp. Years of training under her legendary mentor had prepared her for this, yet she allowed herself no arrogance, only precision. Lieutenant Harlow gathered the team for final instructions. "This is a live operation," he said. "We cannot fail. Hostages are inside, and the enemy is armed and experienced. Every decision, every movement, every shot matters. Emily will take the lead in strategic positioning and observation. Follow her guidance exactly." The weight of the assignment was palpable, and soldiers exchanged tense glances. They had seen Emily excel in training, but the field would test her skills under real pressure. The team moved out in tactical formation, the quiet hum of vehicles and the crunch of boots against gravel the only sounds. Emily stayed slightly behind, scanning the perimeter, analyzing possible enemy approaches, and mapping out angles of attack. Her mind processed hundreds of variables simultaneously: the layout of the facility, elevation changes, wind patterns, potential escape routes, and even the mental state of the hostiles. Every calculation was instinctive, honed from countless hours of mentorship and exercises. They reached the outskirts of the facility. From her vantage point, Emily could see guards patrolling the perimeter, their movements coordinated but predictable to a trained eye. She observed patterns, the way they paused at checkpoints, how shadows affected visibility, and even the rhythm of their breathing under stress. She signaled subtly to the team, directing them to cover positions and optimal vantage points without drawing attention. Her silent guidance shaped the unit's movements, like a conductor leading an orchestra. Inside the facility, hostages were held in a central chamber, visible only through small, partially obscured windows. The paramilitary operatives had fortified the building, placing traps and securing entry points. Any misstep could trigger alarm systems or endanger the hostages. Emily studied the structure, calculating trajectories and lines of sight for both herself and her team. She formulated a plan that balanced aggression with patience, ensuring that the unit could neutralize threats while minimizing risk. Harlow nodded at her, signaling that the team would follow her lead. Emily gave precise instructions, dividing the unit into sections, assigning cover positions, and coordinating timing. Every movement had to be synchronized, every shot calculated. Then came the critical moment. One operative emerged from cover, scanning the area with a weapon. Soldiers tensed, but Emily remained calm. She observed the target's stance, breathing, and movement, and fired. The shot neutralized the threat instantly, without alerting others, or endangering hostages. The team advanced cautiously, following her guidance. Emily moved methodically, her eyes scanning every shadow, every potential hiding spot. She anticipated enemy reactions before they occurred, predicting movements and adjusting her team's positions accordingly. When additional operatives appeared, she selected her shots with flawless precision, creating openings for the team to advance. Each action was calculated, deliberate, and executed with quiet authority. Inside the facility, chaos erupted as the remaining hostiles realized the team's presence. Bullets ricocheted, alarms blared, and shouting echoed through the halls. Yet Emily's composure never wavered. She calculated trajectories, predicted enemy movements, and communicated silently with hand signals and subtle gestures. Soldiers moved in perfect coordination, covering each other and neutralizing threats efficiently. Emily's presence orchestrated the chaos, her influence guiding outcomes without overt commands. At one point, a hostage attempted to flee into the crossfire, creating a moment of tension. Emily reacted instantly, adjusting her aim to neutralize the nearest threat without endangering the civilian. Her rifle rang out, precise and controlled. The immediate danger passed, and the team secured the hostage safely. Soldiers looked at her with awe, realizing that every action she took was both precise and protective. Harlow observed from a nearby position, his admiration tempered by the gravity of the situation. He had always known Emily was exceptional, but in the field, under real-life conditions, her mastery became undeniable. She was not merely a sharpshooter. She was a strategist, a guardian, and a silent force shaping every outcome. Her influence extended beyond her rifle, affecting the team's decisions, movements, and survival. The operation continued with tense precision. Emily identified high-threat positions, neutralized them, and coordinated team movements to secure each room. She anticipated traps, predicted ambushes, and ensured that hostages remained protected at every turn. Her calculations accounted for distance, cover, timing, and human behavior variables that most soldiers struggled to consider under pressure. By the time the team reached the central chamber, the paramilitary operatives were disoriented, their coordination disrupted by Emily's methodical precision. Finally, they entered the room holding the hostages. Emily covered the doorway, while the team moved to secure the civilians. Every operative was neutralized, every threat accounted for. The hostages were unharmed, and the mission's objective achieved. For a moment, the team paused, taking in the successful outcome, their adrenaline slowly subsiding. Soldiers looked at Emily with newfound respect, realizing the depth of her influence and the mastery that had guided them through the operation. Harlow approached her as the team regrouped. "Emily," he said, his voice carrying both relief and admiration, "I don't know if words can describe what you've done. Your leadership, precision, and strategic awareness saved lives today. You've not only proven your skill, but you've elevated the entire unit." Emily nodded, acknowledging the praise without pride. She had been trained to act, not to boast. Results mattered more than recognition. As the team debriefed, soldiers asked questions, seeking insight into her methods. Emily explained principles of observation, patience, and anticipation without revealing all of her knowledge. Her mentor's teachings were powerful, but some lessons were reserved for moments when they could make the difference between life and death. She shared just enough to enhance the team's capabilities while keeping the most critical strategies hidden for the future. That evening, back at the base, Emily reflected on the mission. The operation had tested her skill, patience, and judgment in ways that no simulation ever could. Every decision she had made, every shot fired, every movement executed, had been guided by her mentor's lessons. The impossible shot, the urban simulation, and now this real-world mission had all contributed to her growth and the trust she had earned from her peers. For the first time, The full scope of her influence was recognized. Soldiers who had doubted her now saw her as indispensable. Harlow, who had observed countless elite operatives, understood that Emily was not just skilled, she was extraordinary. She carried the precision, discipline, and strategic awareness of a legend, tempered by humility and patience. Her mentor's shadow had guided her training, but Emily had proven that she could operate independently, flawlessly, and decisively. As night fell, Emily sat quietly in her quarters, cleaning her rifle and reviewing the day's events. She reflected on the delicate balance of influence she now held, guiding the team without dominating, protecting lives while maintaining precision, and sharing knowledge without revealing the full extent of her capabilities. The mission had been a success, but it was also a reminder that the stakes in real operations were higher than anything she had trained for. She remembered her mentor's words, "Skill is a tool. Patience and judgment are the weapon. Only when you combine all elements do you achieve mastery. Use it wisely, and always with purpose." Emily had lived those words today. Every calculation, every decision, and every precise action had been a tribute to her training. The team had succeeded because of her influence, yet the true mastery remained a quiet force, ready to be revealed when it mattered most. Emily Carter had entered the mission as a soldier among others, but she emerged as something more, a strategist, a protector, and a living legacy of a legendary mentor. Her skill was no longer a secret, but the depth of her mastery would continue to unfold in the missions to come. She had proven herself capable, yet she understood that real mastery required continuous vigilance, preparation, and patience. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, and Emily would face them as she always had, calm, precise, and ready. Her mentor's teachings had prepared her for the impossible shot, the urban exercises, and now real-world operations. Yet the ultimate test, the one that would truly reveal her full skill, influence, and legacy, was still ahead. And as she lay down to rest, the distant hum of the base surrounding her, Emily allowed herself a quiet thought. She was ready for anything. She had survived simulations, field exercises, and now a live operation. But the world had yet to see the full measure of Emily Carter, the woman shaped by a legendary sniper, capable of turning the tide of any mission with patience, precision, and unwavering judgment. The sun had barely risen over the base, casting long golden rays across the training grounds, when Lieutenant Marcus Harlow gathered the unit for what was announced as a final, comprehensive mission. Today was not a simple drill, nor a limited simulation. It was a full-scale operation designed to test the team's integration, strategy, and endurance. The paramilitary group from the previous mission had regrouped in a simulated scenario, fortified in a sprawling, multi-level compound. Harlow looked at the team, aware of the tension in the air. Everyone knew Emily Carter had led them brilliantly before, but today, her full mastery would be on display, and the unit had no idea what they were about to witness. Emily arrived with her usual quiet focus, her equipment meticulously checked, rifle calibrated, and mind aligned with every detail she had learned from her legendary mentor. Today, the stakes were higher. Dozens of hostages, multiple enemy positions, and unpredictable variables designed to test their resolve. Soldiers shifted nervously, glancing at Emily with a mixture of curiosity and awe. Harlow's voice broke the silence. "Team, this is it. Every skill you've learned, every lesson you've absorbed, will be tested today. Follow Emily's lead." The operation began. Emily took her position on a ridge overlooking the compound. From there, she observed enemy positions, noting patrol patterns, elevation changes, and lines of sight. She had mapped the entire terrain in her mind, accounting for every possible movement and threat. Her team awaited silent instructions, unaware that the young woman before them had already anticipated nearly every challenge they would face. The first wave of enemy operatives emerged, moving strategically to protect the hostages and fortify their positions. Most soldiers reacted instinctively, firing at what they could see. Emily, however, moved deliberately, selecting targets with surgical precision. Her rifle rang out, each shot perfectly calculated to neutralize threats, while minimizing risk to hostages and teammates. Soldiers froze in disbelief as the targets fell one by one, some eliminated before they even realized Emily had engaged them. Harlow watched, realizing this was not just skill, this was orchestration. Emily's calm composure and strategic thinking dictated the rhythm of the battlefield. She moved fluidly between cover points, her eye on the scope, calculating distances, angles, and trajectories with uncanny accuracy. Every decision she made protected her team while forcing the enemy into predictable patterns. She was no longer just part of the unit. She was the silent commander, the invisible hand guiding the operation. As they advanced toward the compound, Emily coordinated hand signals and subtle gestures, guiding soldiers through tight corridors, stairwells, and exposed courtyards. Enemy operatives attempted ambushes, but Emily anticipated their moves, neutralizing threats in perfect sequence. The team, initially unsure, began to follow her rhythm instinctively, moving as if choreographed, their confidence growing with each successful maneuver. Then came the climactic moment. A sniper positioned high within the compound threatened both hostages and the team. Soldiers hesitated, unable to identify the sniper's location or calculate the distance accurately. Emily observed through her scope, noting subtle glimmers of reflected sunlight and the faintest disturbances in the surrounding debris. Her mentor's voice echoed in her mind. Patience. Observation is your greatest weapon. Strike when certainty aligns with opportunity. She adjusted her scope, accounted for wind, distance, elevation, and even the sniper's stance. The shot required absolute precision. She inhaled, held her breath, and squeezed the trigger. The bullet struck true, neutralizing the threat instantly. Soldiers nearby stared in stunned silence, realizing the impossibility of what they had just witnessed. Emily did not celebrate. She remained calm, her focus shifting seamlessly to the next challenge. Inside the compound, the team faced multiple hostages in separate rooms, guarded by operatives attempting to block access. Emily's tactical mind calculated simultaneous entry points, movement sequences, and firing angles. She directed the team with precise gestures, orchestrating a synchronized advance. Each operator moved confidently, following her silent guidance. The hostages were rescued with efficiency and safety, leaving no room for error. Harlow approached as the last row was cleared. "Emily, I need to understand," he said, his voice a mixture of awe and disbelief. "How do you manage every variable with such accuracy and control?" Emily allowed herself a small smile, her calm unshaken. "It's all about observation, patience, and preparation, sir," she replied. "Anticipating movement, reading behavior, and calculating every possible outcome before action ensures success. That's what I learned from my mentor." At that moment, Harlow realized the full magnitude of what he had witnessed. Emily was not merely a sharpshooter or a strategist. She was the embodiment of a legendary legacy, a living extension of one of the most skilled snipers in history. The team had followed her lead through chaos, uncertainty, and danger, unaware that the invisible force guiding their success was the culmination of years of disciplined mentorship and training. Soldiers who had once doubted her now looked at Emily with profound respect. Her quiet authority, unmatched precision, and strategic foresight had ensured the mission's success. She had protected lives, neutralized threats, and guided the unit through an operation far more complex and dangerous than any training scenario. Her reputation as a sharpshooter had been cemented, but her true mastery lay in the combination of observation, patience, and leadership, a skill set few could rival. As the team regrouped outside the compound, soldiers approached Emily, eager to learn from her. She shared guidance without revealing every secret, teaching lessons that would elevate the team's capabilities while reserving the most critical strategies for moments of real danger. Her mentor's teachings were vast, and she knew the power of selective instruction. The right lesson at the right time could save lives, while too much revealed knowledge could compromise precision. Harlow addressed the team. "Today, you've witnessed something extraordinary," he said. "Emily Carter has demonstrated skill, leadership, and strategic awareness beyond any of us. She has not only ensured the mission's success, but has raised the standard for every one of us. Learn from her. Observe. Follow her example. And never underestimate what a single individual, trained and disciplined, can achieve." Emily stood quietly, accepting recognition with humility. She understood that her role extended beyond the mission. It was about guidance, influence, and silent mastery. She had proven that true skill was not measured by individual victories alone, but by the outcomes shaped through observation, patience, and strategic foresight. As the base returned to normal operations, Emily reflected on the journey that had brought her here. The impossible shot, urban simulations, and the first real mission had all been steps in her growth. Yet today marked the culmination of her training, the full expression of her abilities, and the recognition of her mentor's influence. Soldiers no longer questioned her skill. They respected it, and more importantly, they trusted it. That evening, Emily cleaned her rifle meticulously, her mind reviewing every shot, every calculation, every decision. She understood that mastery was continuous, a process of refinement and vigilance. Her mentor's lessons had prepared her for this moment, but she knew that true challenges lay ahead, missions where precision, patience, and judgment would be tested under conditions far beyond simulations. As night fell over the base, Emily allowed herself a brief moment of satisfaction. Not pride, but acknowledgement of the journey she had undertaken, the mentorship that had shaped her, and the influence she now held over her team. Her actions had changed perceptions, built trust, and demonstrated that mastery was not merely skill, but the ability to shape outcomes with calm authority and deliberate action. Emily Carter had entered the operation as a soldier among others, yet she emerged as a leader, strategist, and master marksman. The team had witnessed her full abilities, the culmination of years of training under a legendary sniper, and the quiet demonstration of a skill set that few could ever hope to rival. She had secured the hostages, neutralized threats, and elevated the entire unit not through boastful displays, but through calculated, deliberate action that spoke louder than words. As she lay in her quarters that night, the hum of the base surrounding her, Emily reflected on the legacy she carried. Her mentor's teachings were alive in every movement, every calculation, every decision. She had proven herself capable of commanding a battlefield, protecting lives, and guiding a team through chaos with precision and foresight. Yet she remained humble, patient, and prepared. The story of Emily Carter, the quiet, unassuming operative who had transformed into a legend in her own right, was now etched in the memories of everyone who had witnessed her. Soldiers spoke in hushed tones of her impossible shot, her calm under fire, and the strategic brilliance that had saved lives. Yet the true depth of her ability, the lessons from her mentor,